Viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. Do me a favor, if you haven't yet, consider hitting that like button, thumbs up, red pill, whatever it might be. Really does help out. That's interesting that the show is skipping over there on Pilled, because I'm looking at it over on other places and it doesn't seem to be skipping. I don't know. Regardless of that fact, it sounds like President Trump has been paying attention. As you know, he normally does. That man has his finger on the pulse of the people. He is all over social media. And he agrees with us. What the Democrats did in the creation of that video was sedition. They were quite literally telling the Central Intelligence Agency and the men and women of our military to defy the President of the United States, and not just him, but also the chain of command. You can't do that. And they're about to find out. F around and find out. Now, not just that, but we have a whole bunch of other things we're going to be talking about. Child of God said YouTube is good. Awesome. Glad to hear it. But I need you to sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get right into it right about now. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. Somebody over on the YouTube comments yesterday asked if I had taken voice lessons. No, I actually haven't taken voice lessons. I've just been doing this for like 8 years now. So you learn how to speak publicly at a certain point. When I first started doing this, I had like zero public speaking experience. I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I basically just like made it up as I went along. In terms of like my technique and the way that I spoke and everything that you see on camera. But it just happens, a couple of years down the line, you basically figure out what works and what doesn't. And so hopefully I have figured out what works. And maybe that's why you guys are here, because I'm not just throwing random takes. I've been thinking about all of these things virtually my whole life. It's funny when people disagree with me too, and they're like, I can't believe that you think that, or I can't believe that you act this way. And like, God, dude, I'm almost 50. I don't know what to tell you at this point. Like, if I haven't made up my mind on who I am as a person at this late stage in my life, and I'm going to bend to the whim of some random person on the internet, then I guess I really wouldn't have much in the way of integrity now, would I? All right, you guys, appreciate you being here. First of all, before we dive into the news, I do need to give a big shout out to the sponsors of today's program. That's going to be, first of all, my friends over at onenessdrops.com/redpill78. My friends at Oneness Drops are offering you, the viewers of this program, a 15% off discount when you purchase any of their products, and primarily what they offer is chlorine dioxide water purification kits. Chlorine dioxide is a substance which will take care of microbes and viruses and germs and basically take dirty, unsafe water and turn it into clean, fresh drinking water. So if for whatever reason you can't get clean water from the tap, or maybe you live in an area where you harvest rainwater, or maybe you're hiking and you have to drink out of a river and you don't know what the source of that water is, you should probably have some chlorine dioxide with you to make sure that that water is going to be safe for you and you're not going to get giardia or any other things like that, or coliforms. There's a whole bunch of nasty stuff that could be in water. They also offer mullein extract, which is great for lung health. They also have soursop extract, which is great for cellular regeneration. And then they also have pure DMSO. There is ample research about DMSO online and how to apply it, how you can use it, and why it's so effective in the ways that it is. highly recommend using that as well. Don't forget about my friend Mike Lindell over at mypillow.com. Make sure that you use code RP78 to save up to 80% off of everything that Mike offers on the platform. And of course, when you support MyPillow, you're also going to be supporting Red Pill 78 and also here at Red Pill News. And you're also going to be supporting election integrity. We'll talk about the other sponsors of the show later on in the program. But thank you so much once again. I'd like to give you guys an update on the censure of Representative Corey Mills, because we talked about him quite a bit yesterday. Well, unsurprisingly, the censure motion for Corey Mills failed to advance on the House floor, but Corey Mills' case is being sent to the Ethics Committee. It is an appropriate measure for the Ethics Committee to take up because what Corey Mills is accused of are certainly ethical in their implication. So let's take a look at this vote. Very short clip here, but we can see from the results there were 204 yays from the Republicans, 106 yays from the Democrats, 8 nays from Republicans, 3 no votes, 4 present, 95 nays from the Democrats, 8 present, and 5 votes. And ultimately, this is definitely going to be something that they're going to have to look into because the claims against Corey Mills are pretty disturbing.
On this vote, the yeas are 310, the nays are 103, those present, 12. The motion is adopted.
So most of Congress agrees that the Ethics Committee should be taking a look at what Corey Mills is doing in his personal life. But it's not just what he did with women that he was dating. As I told you yesterday, Corey Mills also has some pretty serious stolen valor claims that have been made against him. These are the easiest to verify and to back up. Now, Anna Paulina Luna shared a statement that was shared by Corey Mills, but was not actually written by Corey Mills himself. Now, as someone who did not serve in the military, but comes from a family of many people who served in the military, including my father. My father took his military service very, very seriously. And if anybody tried to claim something that wasn't true about what he did, or if I didn't characterize his service in the proper way, my father would very calmly make sure that the way that it was spoken about was exactly the way that it was. Corey Mills is accused of making claims which are not even remotely the same as what his military service is alleged to have been. And this is, again, the kind of stuff that you can look up. It's available out there online. And I'm kind of shocked that Corey has not come forward to directly debunk any of the claims of stolen valor that have been made against him. So the claim here says, official statement of Catherine Treadwell. She is the chief of staff and the general counsel for Corey Mills. When you have your lawyer or your chief of staff make statements on your behalf, it kind of looks like you don't want to be the one making that statement. It says Corey Mills earned his Bronze Star and the paperwork proves it. But as we learned yesterday, the man who allegedly signed the paperwork for that Bronze Star claims that he never actually signed the paperwork for that Bronze Star. So then the question becomes, who actually signed it? General Bray authorized and approved this award, and any assertion that I signed General Bray's paperwork without authorization is at best uninformed and at worst offensive slander. As the wife of a Green Beret, I know firsthand the toll that service takes on the servicemen who sacrifice everything to defend this nation, and I have tremendous respect for Bronze Star recipients. I think we all do. I don't think that's in contention. I've also had a front row seat to Corey's dedication to the American people while working alongside him in a civilian capacity, watching him step up time and time again to help Americans in danger, whether stranded overseas in Israel or Haiti or in North Carolina. Actions like these take courage that most of the people attacking him will never understand themselves. Again, I don't think that anyone is suggesting that individual acts of bravery are not worth the accolades that people receive for them. But the really unfortunate thing is that the good men and women of the military who are open and honest about their history and about what accolades they should be afforded they have those accolades sort of diminished when people make claims that are not true. And of course, even if the people making claims are doing good things, those individual good acts are also going to be diminished. Now, Anna Paulina Luna responds and says, as a veteran myself and the wife of a combat veteran, I find it abhorrent that Corey is using a woman to come to his defense while refusing to address the restraining order I have personally seen. And we've all actually seen it. I mean, this is now public record. Last time I checked, revenge porn is disgusting. It's also illegal and should never be tolerated or given a pass in the Republican Party. I think every single one of my colleagues agrees. We are who we keep, and we should not keep this. I really can't, I can't stand in opposition to what Anna Paulina Luna is saying there. And I think that Corey needs to come out with a more full-throated explanation of what's going on. I mean, everybody behaves badly in relationships from time to time. I mean, is there anybody here who has never had a bad breakup or who maybe did something that they were ashamed of later, or maybe like looked back on the way they behaved at some point in time in the past and said, God, I really wish I hadn't have done that? I mean, everybody does that. There is always something that we could have done better in our past. But a sitting member of Congress threatening to release revenge porn on somebody that does not want to talk to them anymore. I mean, that is really below the belt. I simply don't see how somebody recovers from that. Snowcat Operator, thank you so much, my friend, for dropping those subscriptions for my fam over there on Rumble. I really do appreciate it. Also, Q Patriot Angel said, so weird that a viewer noticed. Working overnights and sometimes when I cannot get to sleep, seem to always fall asleep on you, which I hate. I have to go back and watch the replay. Lisa is a very blessed lady. Thank you so much. And it won't be the first time that I've heard people say that my voice is soothing and it can put them to sleep. Years ago, I had a friend from high school who was like, I want you to read me a book on tape, and I want you to record it so that I can just listen to it when I go to sleep because your voice is so soothing. I did some radio when I was in high school, well, even before high school. But I've done radio at various points in my life, or at least recording in a recording studio to use for broadcast. And when I first started doing this, I had forgotten anything that I learned. So I don't know, maybe things came back over time. All right, continuing. We also do have a lead on that story that my good boy Filter Dog over there had let us know about at the very end of the program. Serpentine, quiet piggy. Good Dog says, keep on trucking. You do a great job, Zach. Thank you so much, my friend over there on Pilled. Filter Dog, over the past year, yes, 2.5 million native-born Americans gained employment. 670,000 foreign-born workers lost employment. We are totally going to be going there in just a moment. Now, let's talk about Florida Democrat Congresswoman Sheila Cherfulus McCormick. Why is it always such a mouthful? Why can't people just have normal names? Democrat Congresswoman Sheila Cherfulus McCormick, as Filter Dog let us know yesterday, indicted by a federal grand jury for stealing $5 million in FEMA funds. Obviously, anybody who lives in Florida knows how desperately FEMA funds can be needed from time to time. Now, the Justice Department says that Representative, we'll just call her McCormick, and her brother Edwin Cherfulus stole this $5 million in FEMA funds. They funneled it into a series of accounts that were meant to wash the money and make it look as if it was a legitimate form of income. And much of that money was then used to pay for Sheila McCormick's 2021 congressional campaign. She is now facing decades in prison, you guys, 53 years in prison if she gets convicted. And considering that the Justice Department is fairly, I guess, adept at getting convictions, and in a situation like this, public corruption, where the Public Corruption Bureau of the Federal Bureau of Investigation was disbanded because they weren't doing anything. I think that the government under Kash Patel and, of course, President Trump's administration is really looking for some wins to take down corrupt public officials like this. This is something that Brad and I talked about last night. It's not something that you were seeing during the Biden administration, and it certainly wasn't something that you saw in past administrations as well. We are getting a lot of people paying the piper during this administration. And I just want to remind everybody, once again, we are barely 11 months into this administration. So what she did was use disaster relief funds for her own self-enrichment in a particularly selfish and cynical crime. Pam Bondi says no one is above the law. I love that. Let's go ahead and give her a rim shot. And least of all powerful people who rob taxpayers for personal gain. We will follow the facts in this case and deliver justice. So a federal grand jury in Miami returned this indictment. They charged her with, and several co-defendants, not only her brother, with the theft of this disaster relief fund. Now, according to the indictment, she and Edwin, both of Miramar, Florida, worked through their own family healthcare company and used a FEMA-funded COVID-19 vaccine staffing contract back in 2021. In July of that year, the company received an overpayment of $5 million, which came from these FEMA funds. So then the defendants conspired to steal this $5 million. They routed it through all of these different accounts to disguise it as income. They didn't want it to be obvious where the money was coming from. And then they used a substantial portion of this misappropriated money to essentially run her campaign for Congress. And also, of course, for the personal benefit of both she, her brother, and then a number of other individuals, which includes Nadege LeBlanc, 46 of Miramar as well. They arranged additional contributions to her campaign using straw donors, which means that the money likely came from these FEMA funds, and then they would give the money to people who would then donate it back to the campaign. And then they would be able to get around campaign finance limits that way. They would then funnel other monies from the FEMA-funded COVID-19 contract. They would give it to friends and relatives, and then they would donate it as if it was their own money. It's charging her as well as her tax preparer, David K. Spencer. He's down here in Davie, Florida. He and she apparently conspired to file a false federal tax return. Likely, he saw her income and he said, "Where did this $5 million come from?" And she said, "David, sit down. I'm going to have to tell you a story." Now, according to the indictment, they both falsely claimed political spending and other personal expenses as business deductions and then inflated charitable contributions so that she could further reduce her own tax obligations. Now, I have said, President Trump has said, you need to understand how the tax code works so that you can best minimize your tax liability at the end of the year. But doing what she did and what Hunter Biden did and a lot of people who otherwise would be paying a lot of taxes is totally not the way it's supposed to work. So she faces, well, it says 35 years here, but I read 53 years up above. LeBlanc is facing up to 10 years. Oh, I'm sorry. She faces 53. Her brother faces 35. LeBlanc faces 10 years. And then Spencer faces 33 years. So this is a fairly serious case. Now, there was also a clip that I saw on X of she was being confronted at what appeared to be a campaign stop or some type of public event that she was at by the local news. Let me see if I can find that because I meant to save it earlier and then I didn't. Let me see. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Ah, here it is. Here it is.
And
Congresswoman indicted.
responding to them today after being accused of stealing millions in federal disaster money.
We have new reaction out of Washington to those charges and word she is already stepping down from a committee leadership position. We have team coverage here at noon on this indictment.
We're going to start things off with Local 10's Syra Onwar. She's live in Miramar with the brand new statement that's coming out from the Congresswoman herself.
We're outside of the
What do you guys think? Do you think misogyny? Do you think racism? Or do you think political targeting? What is she going to use as an excuse for stealing $5 million in disaster relief funds from the American taxpayer and the people of Florida? I want you to see it in the chat. Tell me in the chat, misogyny, racism, or political targeting.
FBI office here in Miramar. Representative Sheila Sherfulis McCormick officially charged now by the Department of Justice, who says she used her family's health care company to steal $5 million in federal funds. Here's a live look outside of her office in D.C. right now. She's a U.S. congressional representative.
She's got the door closed. You know she's got the door closed. The Representative Sherfulis McCormick is not accepting visitors or questions from the media at this time.
Representative representing an area of Fort Lauderdale, Lauderhill, parts of West Palm Beach. She was elected a couple years ago. She won that election just by 5 votes. It was a special election held after the death of Representative Alcee Hastings. Again, she is now officially charged for this crime.
A federal grand jury indicting Congresswoman Sheila Sherfulis McCormick and a number of her associates, accusing them of stealing millions of federal disaster funds, laundering that money, and using part of it to support her 2021 congressional campaign.
The money we invested was to make sure that we can touch the people in the community, but the money didn't determine this election because most people who put a lot of money in the community, in the campaigns, they don't win.
Federal prosecutors say Sherfulis McCormick and her...
Actually, it sounds like that $5 million got her at least 5 more votes.
Brother Edwin Sherfulis ran a FEMA-funded COVID-19 vaccination staffing contract through their family health care company. Prosecutors say in July of 2021,
Let me also just say that if you get $5 million from the federal government, they're going to want to take a look at your books and make sure that you actually used it to purchase the staffing or the supplies that you said you were going to be using to purchase it with.
company got a $5 million overpayment. Prosecutors say the group diverted that money and tried to hide it through multiple accounts. The indictment says a big portion of those funds was used for campaign contributions and personal expenses. Prosecutors allege the South Florida Democrat and Nadege LeBlanc arranged more donations.
She had to stop and Nadege?
through straw donors, funneling money to friends and relatives who then donated to the campaign as if they were using their own money.
Now, do you think that all those other people are going to be willing to go to prison for decades for Representative Sherfulis McCormick? How soon do you think somebody becomes a cooperating witness?
Investigators say the Congresswoman, with the help of her tax preparer David Spencer, filed a false federal tax return, allegedly disguising political spending and personal costs as business deductions. Representative Sherfulis McCormick putting out this statement this morning saying, quote, "This is an unjust, baseless, sham indictment and I am innocent. The timing alone is curious and clearly meant to distract from far more pressing national issues. From day one, I have fully cooperated with every lawful request and I will continue to do so until this matter is resolved. I am deeply grateful for the support of my district and I remain confident that the truth will prevail. I look forward to my day in court. Until then, I will continue fighting for my constituents."
All right, so she's blaming politics here. She's saying that it's meant to distract from national issues. Let me tell you, Congresswoman, nobody knew who you were until this indictment came out. Even among your constituents, you obviously didn't get elected by much if those 5 votes were even legitimate. At least half the district probably doesn't know, care, or like you.
Now, that statement just issued this morning. Now, if convicted, Sherfulis McCormick could face up to 53 years in prison.
Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame? Now, we also have an update on President Trump's fight to keep the National Guard in Washington, D.C. A federal judge, who you know well, Judge Zak Paine, an appointee of Joseph Robinette Biden, has ruled that President Trump's troop deployment is illegal. So she is effectively blocking his ability to keep the National Guard in Washington, D.C. Apparently, in Democrat-run cities, there is a mandatory minimum for drugs, murders, and carjackings, and President Trump has obviously brought us below that threshold. Federal judge has now halted President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. This is coming from Reuters, so they say it's a temporary legal setback to his efforts to send the military to American cities over the objection of local leaders. Judge Zak Paine, District Judge Zak Paine, an appointee of former Joe Biden, temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deploying National Guard troops to enforce the law in the nation's capital without approval from its mayor. Now, as far as I know, President Trump already had approval from the mayor. The mayor had previously come out and said, "Thank you, President Trump, for helping make our city safe in the absence of our own police being able to do that." This is also undoubtedly going to be appealed. President Trump has previously said it's history and precedent. Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act, it places Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police under the direct federal control. It also authorizes the Secretary of Defense to deploy the National Guard to Washington, D.C. I think just like many other of these judges who probably had little to no legal history prior to becoming judges, they simply don't understand the law in the way that it's written. Probably, as we have seen in the past, she has shown herself to be an activist more than a jurist. And 740 authorizes President Trump to place the National Guard in this city, and the federalization of the Metropolitan Police Department has already been done. He signed that executive order. He's gotten the okay from the mayor. So quite literally, if this only hangs upon the hat of Mayor Muriel Bowser, I wonder if they're going to appeal and say, well, Muriel Bowser also already said that she's totally good with this. So anyways, we'll see how this turns out. I don't think that it's a deal breaker. The mainstream media is championing Judge Giacob, but just like every other activist judge all around the country, it's just another step before President Trump takes it to a higher court. The higher court says that lower district court was wrong. President Trump can go back and use the power of the executive branch or whatever it is, whatever tool he's using at that time. All right. Now, we also have new information about additional theft, waste, fraud, waste, abuse, graft coming out of Minnesota on behalf of Somalian immigrants. It would appear that Somalians in Minnesota have been using fraudulent autism Medicare funds to fund Somali terror groups, including Al-Shabaab. There are claims rising from $3 million in 2018 to $399 million in 2023. That effectively makes Minnesota taxpayers the largest funder of terror in Somalia. They are funding Al-Shabaab. I read another quote that said that in the past year, they may have sent $1.7 billion in stolen federal funds to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. That is larger than the entire national budget of the nation of Somalia. You can see here, much like the HSS program, autism claims to Medicaid in Minnesota have skyrocketed in recent years from $3 million in 2018 to $54 million in 2019, $77 million in 2020, $183 million in 2021, $279 million in 2022, and $399 million in 2023. Look, they just got more and more bold every single year. Meanwhile, the number of autism providers in the state has spiked from 41 to 328 over the same period. Many are in the Somali community, establishing their own autism treatment centers, citing the need for culturally appropriate programming. By the time the fraud scheme was exposed, 1 in 16 Somali 4-year-olds in the state had reportedly been diagnosed with autism. That is a rate that is more than triple the average of the rest of the state of Minnesota. So this is no surprise. We keep coming upon these examples of government fraud that arise out of Minnesota. And I just have to ask the question, how long before we begin sending people home? I know we're already starting to send people to prison, but once they get out of prison, I don't believe that they should be allowed to stick around any longer. All right, now we also have 2 updates coming from the Charlie Kirk case. Now, we were told initially that the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, along with his father, turned himself in to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Now, that would be the kind of thing that you would want to see, right? That information, that video file should have been turned over to the FBI. But it would appear that a local Salt Lake City television station, a news broadcaster, has now uncovered that this critical surveillance video of Tyler Robinson turning himself in apparently doesn't exist. Either it was mysteriously deleted or it was never taken in the first place. Now, this is coming from KUTV2 News. They requested this surveillance footage of the surrender just weeks after the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk there in Utah. And, of course, with that much time having elapsed, you would think that considering this is one of the most important cases of the modern age, the Washington County Police would have made sure that video was directly backed up. Some type of I guess, safety measures would have been taken to make sure that it was placed into the hands of investigators. But no, that allegedly did not happen because they submitted these public record requests for the surveillance footage, and the sheriff's office responded by saying, "We do not have any records responsive to this portion of the request, as Tyler Robinson did not go to or enter the jail area." So the station said holding room video was denied as part of the investigation. That is very odd. When pressed with a broader request for any surveillance video of Tyler Robinson entering the building, officials then changed their story. They claimed that the footage simply no longer exists because it was automatically deleted after the department's 30-day retention period. So the reporters that are trying to get this information requested surveillance video showing Tyler Robinson walking into the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Anybody here ever walked into a sheriff's office or a police station anywhere in the country? They've got cameras covering that whole thing because there can be lawsuits. There can be obviously a need for preservation of evidence. But the office, after that request, stated the video was never sent out to any law enforcement or legal agency, which means that the main investigating agency in Utah County never received it, and nobody allegedly ever bothered to preserve it. Now, a veteran Utah criminal defense attorney named Rudy Batista, who has handled a number of capital cases for decades, over 26 years, he said that the disappearance of this video is deeply disturbing. For the state of Utah, we would certainly hope that this video is available. He went further and suggested that the sheriff's office response appeared designed to shut the door on public and press scrutiny. If, in fact, it has been destroyed and not preserved, that is highly concerning. And if it has, then it's very concerning that they're telling you that they don't have it. If they no longer have it, I would have expected to say that this video has been provided to the Utah County law enforcement, but instead this letter leads, in my opinion, as trying to shut the door and not give you free press access. So the destruction or the disappearance of surrender footage in one of the most high-profile political assassination cases of the modern age inevitably raises some pretty serious questions about the chain of custody on evidence, the integrity of any evidence that might be in the hands of investigators, whether or not that evidence was being properly preserved, or just conveniently allowed to vanish. But this goes hand in hand with the sort of tenor of this investigation since the very beginning, doesn't it? Wait till you hear the second update on the Charlie Kirk case. Many are already very skeptical of the official story, and now that we have missing evidence, it's guaranteed to give people rise to come up with more theories as to why that may be. I said a long time ago, in the absence of information or evidence, people are going to come to their own conclusions. That is a natural progression of events. As of today, the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the Utah County Prosecutor, nobody has offered any plausible explanation, no additional information as to why the video of the suspect surrendering in a key moment of this case was never preserved by investigators. So we're just going to have to obviously come up with our own ideas on this. Oh, and thank you so much, Micro Toolmaker, where we go one, we go all. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for the support. Also, thank you for dropping the 10 membership subscriptions for the viewers over there on Rumble. You, sir, are a scholar and a gentleman. I really do appreciate you. Let me also say thank you very much to Big Bird 38 over on Pilled. Thank you for supporting the show, sir. Thanks for your dedication, he says. Also, Filter Dog says, recall Congress booted Santos before he was even convicted. Go back to Cherfulous McCormick. There is a resolution being presented to expel her from Congress as well. I would say that she's probably not going to be a sitting congresswoman for much longer. Also, thank you to Sean Joe for the 2 cookies. And Filter Dog says, well, Zach, Sheila did step down from her committee assignments and she needs to resign. I bet you that she's not going to resign. I bet you she's going to make them kick her out. But yes, I agree with you. Okay, I think that based upon what they did to George Santos, they need to kick her out. The evidence looks pretty overwhelming. However, I am not in favor, generally speaking, of people being kicked out of their positions before they've had the opportunity to go before a court of law and have their day in court. But I think that she's guilty, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm comfortable with this one. All right. Now, in the next update to the Charlie Kirk case, we have another interesting tidbit that came from Charlie Kirk's former head of security. It turns out that he's got the sauce on who was supposed to be watching the roof that day. If you go back to the day of the assassination, the days and weeks after, there was a bit of confusion as to why no one was posted up in these very obvious areas. Very similar to Butler, where President Trump almost lost his life. I think that me, not being a security professional, one of the first things I would have done is said, we need somebody on that roof, we need somebody on that roof, and we need somebody on that roof. You should have had men posted on each and every one of those roofs. And I would go so far as to say maybe 2 or 3 men posted up on those roofs. I was mentioning the other day in relation to the sort of speculation around Charlie's security team. And I said that I think it is less likely that the security team had something to do with it and more likely that local authorities would have had something to do with it. And this seems to indicate that I may have been right. This might have been a Utah job through and through. I mean, the parties that are involved in this case are all in Utah. The strange things happening at the coroner's office, at the hospital, there on the campus with the intelligence program that they have on campus, the direct ties to the Central Intelligence Agency and Mossad. It's all right there in Utah. This was not another state, and everybody who was involved in this, including all of the witnesses that seem to have very strange backstories, they're all out of Utah. Well, Charlie's former head of securities has the text messages showing that the Utah Valley University police chief promised him that he and his men would be covering the roof that day. So, on the Sean Ryan show, Brian Harpole, who is now Charlie Kirk's former head of security, showed these text messages with Utah Valley University Police Chief Jeff Long, where they were discussing the need for people to be covering these roofs. The vulnerabilities were obvious. These guys were security professionals, and they made sure to say, we need men on those roofs. And the chief said, I got you covered. So you can see here in the messages themselves, the conversation took place over text messages in the days leading up to that September 10th event. And speaking to Chief Long, Harpole informed him that he was told that students had access to rooftops and walkways directly above the area where Charlie was going to be speaking. And so he asked if he wanted access to the roof. Harpole replied that it would be ideal to either lock it down or allow one of his men to be posted up there. And the chief said, I got you covered, boss. Hello, Chief Long. We received this message today from the student group for FYSA. I don't know what that acronym means. There is student roof access pretty close to where CK will be set up at Utah Valley. The Sorensen Student Center has a couple staircases that go up to the walkways on the roof. And the chief says, you want access to the roof? And Harpole says, I was told students have access above us. If this is true, it would be nice to either have it controlled access or allow one of my guys to be there as well, if possible. And he says, I got you covered 2 days before Charlie loses his life. And he says, thank you, sir. Now, he didn't ask him after that what he meant. Neither of the men involved in that conversation clarified if they would be covering or if they would be offering to let Brian Harpole's guys up there cover it. And Harpole indicates that he believed this meant law enforcement would be covering the rooftops, not that law enforcement would be making sure their guys were up on the rooftops. I feel like, even if this is the fault of the police, it's a pretty big oversight. on behalf of Harpole. Any way you slice it, a man lost his life, and it is completely unacceptable. Let's take a listen to the clip.
We were still working through the arrival, and so we have concern.
And I need to say thank you very much to Cheatin' Old Joe. Thank you very much for the 5 subscriptions for the viewers over there on Rumble. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Concerns with rooftops. We got a location that we're not keen with. We know what our responsibility is. We know what our statutory authority is. We know that
I know FYIS would be for your information, stupid, but it was for FYAS. For your approval, sir, maybe?
we can't go up and set up our guys in sniper observer positions. It's not going to be allowed. And so we have some correspondence with the chief of the school on that day, on Monday before Charlie was killed. And why this hadn't come out and why he won't stand up like a man and admit this, I don't know. But he's watching a bunch of men lose their career.
I'll tell you why it hasn't come out. Because in a situation like this, people immediately start covering their own asses. People start passing blame. Nobody wants to be responsible for the death of a high-profile protectee like Charlie Kirk. And certainly the state of Utah is bearing the brunt of the blame when it comes to this. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it looks like there were elements inside the state of Utah that cultured and fostered the environment which led to the extreme situation. Even more than that, let's talk about the international aspect. If we're looking at potential other parties, that's even worse because it means that the lax security environment allowed for potential other parties to take part in the political assassination of somebody who had a very high profile. Any way you define the events of that day, this is a tremendous lapse of judgment, or worse, an intentional lapse of security, which led to the horrific events that we saw unfold that day. There is no good way you can spin this. So I'm frankly not surprised that somebody like this is trying to cover their own ass.
Rears. And he's okay with it. On Monday before, this correspondence went to Chief Long. Hello, Chief Long. We received this message today from the student group. There is a student roof access pretty close to where CK will be set up at the Utah Valley. The Sorensen Center has a couple of staircases that go up to walkways on the roofs. He comes back, and for edification, the Sorensen Center was the building in front of the Lucy Center. And so he comes back and he says, you want access to the roof. And came back and said, I was told students have access above us. If this is true, it would be nice to either have it controlled access or allow one of my guys to be there as well, if possible. He comes back, and his last correspondence was, I got you covered. What else am I to do? When a command level person from an accredited police department says, I've got this area.
Jeez. Have you been in who was that?
That was the chief of police for the UVU police department. We've called him. He's never called us back.
Holy shit.
So that's pretty damning right there. And I think that speaks volumes about what this chief is now thinking and how he's interpreting the events of that day. He certainly doesn't want to be on record having made any additional statements which could further impugn his or his department's abilities to keep people safe. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I certainly wouldn't be feeling very good about holding an event at a university like that at any point in the future. Certainly not UVU specifically.
Does he have a name?
Chief Long.
Chief Long.
And I didn't know if it said deputy in that or not, because in the correspond or in his stuff on the website, it says Deputy Chief Long, but we just called him Chief Long. So
now, it also should be noted that even if this looks bad for Chief Long, I still think it looks bad for Charlie Kirk's own security team because they didn't follow up. They also have a level of culpability in the loss of their most important client. So don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I don't think this exonerates them at all. Now, he seems like he's pretty disturbed by the whole thing. But I think just like Chief Long, he doesn't want to be the one holding the bag and taking the blame for the loss of Charlie's life.
So it's like, yeah, I got guys that are 10 times more qualified than what he could have produced for us, probably.
So literally all they had to do is post anybody at that stairwell.
Stairwell,
or put a drone up, or.
And here's another example of why I think this looks so bad for them. I mean, they're standing there, they're looking out at the event. They can see whether or not people are up on those roofs. And they chose not to do anything about it. I mean, they got there. I would imagine that they did a sweep. This is not something that you're going to follow up on. This is not something that you're going to say, hey, why don't I see anybody up on those roofs? I mean, you guys, we're not professionals. And I mean, I think every single one of us said the same thing. We said the same thing that day on Butler. Why didn't they have anybody up on those roofs? How is that possible? Well, if they got the outcome they were looking for, that's an example of how something like that would be possible. Really, really sad. But he didn't promise to cover the roof, John Bray says. The conversation was to all security team access. Nowhere in the text exchange doesn't anyone suggest that the UVU campus police will cover the rooftops. To try to exonerate himself from responsibility with this text is misleading. And I think John's right. And that's why I pointed it out, that this does not exonerate the security team. It looks bad for everyone. All around. This is not a good look. It's really sad. And unfortunately, we don't have more information. And I really sincerely hope that we get that information. Now, I also want to mention that yesterday I saw a story being passed around that the FBI was looking into other people who were involved with the assassination. It was an article that had come out back in August, and it was a statement that Kash Patel made when asked if there were investigations looking into the possibility of other people. And at that time, I think Kash Patel had said, we're looking into everything and up to and including the possibility of others being involved. But people were sharing this old article and they were saying, oh my gosh, the FBI is looking at other people. Nothing like that has come out, unfortunately. Now, we also have some investigations having to do with Butler. This should probably surprise no one, but Jesse Waters reported last night that sources inside Congress are saying, not shockingly, the Biden administration, FBI, stonewalled the investigation into Butler. I think every single one of us already knew that that was happening.
Fox News alert. We have more new images of the Trump shooter. The New York Post just released photos that Thomas Crooks posted online showing the wannabe assassin brandishing a handgun and a bolt-action rifle. He posted these back in 2019 and 2020. The New York Post told us about his violent threats, TDS, they-them pronouns, and muscle mommy fetish. None of this was in the congressional report. Now, two congressmen are saying Biden's FBI...
What? Muscle mommy fetish? Is that a thing?
Guy stonewalled it. Quote, we were stymied so much by what the feds look at, we couldn't look at anything.
Yes, Snook, you're you're so right. There are so many people out there who just became multi-million followings overnight. Sean Ryan is one of them. I think Ian Carroll, that's another one.
And then they said in the final report, they didn't tell the full story. We all know it wasn't done, it wasn't complete, and the reason for that is they can't handle the truth. They don't want people to handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Details on Crooks are dripping out. We want.
What does that even mean, living in America? I mean, I think it was exactly what it looked like just a big, muscly woman, I guess. That's the only thing. That's what I got from it.
The full story, and we look forward to hearing more from Trump's FBI.
Yes, if only we could get more information from President Trump's FBI. I kid. I have a lot of faith in the work that the FBI is doing. I think that what people tend to forget is that in past administrations, you had a very corrupt FBI, DOJ, many other federal agencies, and a lot of times they would come out and they would attempt to use the media to sort of drive the narrative before actually getting to court and presenting evidence. That is not a healthy method to use, and it can screw up cases. It can also give people the wrong idea. So I think that the reason we have little public statements on some of these things is because, God willing, this is going to be used in court. All right. Also, we have an update from Jasmine Crockett. Remember yesterday that I reported Jasmine Crockett had very, very misleadingly on the floor of Congress suggested that a number of members of President Trump's administration had received donations from Jeffrey Epstein. Well, as I told you, these were not the Jeffrey Epstein. They were just people who happened to be named Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jasmine Crockett actually got called out on CNN of all places, and she refused to back down. She actually leaned into it, and she got kind of incredulous, and she was like, I know that it wasn't the Jeffrey Epstein. That's why I said someone named Jeffrey Epstein. But the insinuation is clear. This is the kind of dirty tricks that people in areas of government have used through the mainstream media to influence the minds of the American people and give them the wrong impression. They know that people are just going to hear television characters unironically saying things, and then people will then later repeat them as if they are fact, even though they haven't done the research to get the information.
You talked about Republicans taking money from a Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what you said.
Look at her face.
Who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney.
She kind of absolved herself right there. Having my team dig in very quickly, which means that there was absolutely no fact checking in the retrieval of this name. It's like, remember the other day I reported on a man named J.D. Vance that went to prison for threatening President Trump and Vice President Vance? That would be like Jasmine Crockett going on the floor of Congress and saying, J.D. Vance is going to prison for threatening to hurt the president. What kind of an administration are you running here?
The NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio.
You mentioned Lee Zeldin there. He's now a cabinet secretary. He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor that doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunately,
no relation, genius. No freaking relation, you genius. That's so funny because the clapping thing is something that people like Jasmine Crockett will frequently do in real life. I never really understood that.
For that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people that
they can't sue her because of the speech and debate clause? I have to keep bringing it up. But anytime you hear a member of Congress say something that is obviously false, you're hearing them do it from the floor of Congress or from inside the halls of Congress because they are protected by the speech and debate clause. They can literally lie to you.
I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein, just so that people understand.
Massive fail. Massive fail, Jasmine Crockett.
And when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So
Oh, no. They actually did go through the FEC. I mean, they were clear on which Jeffrey Epstein was donating to Democrats. I mean, it's actually been like an open secret for a really long time. This wasn't like a difficult thing to research. It was the Jeffrey Epstein, just like it was the Jeffrey Epstein who went to Bill Clinton's White House on 17 different occasions, just like it was the Jeffrey Epstein who flew to Epstein Island on many, many, many different occasions. This is a huge difference here. Jasmine Crockett is such a clown.
My team, what they did is they Googled, and that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey.
They Googled? Well, that's how you know they got it wrong.
Epstein, unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies. Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when
the what?
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah, I don't know, Jasmine.
Lee Zeldin had something to say. All he had to say was it was a Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now, have I dug in?
Are you kidding me? You were trying to mislead people. That's why you said it. There was no reason to say it unless there was an intention to mislead, because it was clear that they were not the Jeffrey Epstein. It's, what is it now? The name Jeffrey Epstein is suddenly persona non grata. Anybody named Jeffrey Epstein? I wouldn't want to be named Lee Harvey Oswald, but damn, it's pretty obvious I'm not that Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm also not Thomas Crooks.
And to find out who this doctor is, I have not. So I will trust and take what he says is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody. I literally had maybe 20 minutes before I had to do that.
I swear I was not trying to mislead anybody. Yes, you actually were.
Yeah, but people might see that and say, well, you're trying to make it sound like he took money from
I did not know.
A registered sex offender.
No, but I literally did not know. When you search.
So why say it? Why? Why say it? Unless you wanted the insinuation to be there. Like, she's such a clown.
FEC files. And that's what I had my team to do. I texted them and I said, listen, we're going up. They are saying that she took donations.
Right, but someone might say, well, your team should have done the homework to make sure it wasn't the convicted sex trafficker.
Within 20 minutes, you could not find that out, not from just.
Actually, yes, she definitely could have found that out by going to the FEC website and doing a check to make sure that it was the same Jeffrey Epstein. You can actually 100% do that.
On a quick search on FEC. So
it's so funny because Caitlin Collins is even like, stop. You're just making it worse. You're digging a hole here. Jasmine Crockett's on her way to China right now.
Number one, I made sure that I was clear that it was a Jeffrey Epstein, but I never said that it was specifically that Jeffrey Epstein because I knew that we would need more time to really dig in.
Yeah, that is so funny. I cannot believe that she even had the gall to try to get that off on air. Okay, now somebody else who is another clown, another liar, is Hakeem Jeffries, Dollar Tree Obama, Brooklyn Barack. He called James Comer a liar or something maybe even worse than that. We're going to hear James Comer taking Hakeem Jeffries to the woodshed right here on the floor of Congress because, again, very easy to back this up. This is Hakeem Jeffries' campaign writing the Jeffrey Epstein about their rising star, Brooklyn Barack. They wanted Jeffrey Epstein to come to Brooklyn Barack's fundraising event that Barack Hussein Obama was attending, and they wanted Jeffrey Epstein to support him. Let me just make sure everybody is aware. This was May 7th of 2013. This is several years after the Jeffrey Epstein was officially a sex offender and on the list. So let's take a listen. Oh, I'm going to have to refresh.
I've taken to the floor today to respond to Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries calling me a, quote, stone-cold liar during a press conference defending the recent discovery of Democrats' communication with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And I bring with me something that he and many of his fellow Democrats like Jamie Raskin, Jasmine Crockett, and Stacey Plaskett, apparently detest. And that is a thing called evidence. Tuesday, I gave a speech on the House floor.
Bruce Q. Wayne over on Pilled makes another great point. I didn't even catch this. I didn't see the date of the donation of Dr. Jeffrey Epstein to Lee Zeldin, but Bruce says the Jeffrey Epstein was already dead 18 months earlier. All she or her staff had to do was Google that. That's even worse.
Detailing my House Oversight Committee's good work to date on our Epstein investigation. After all, Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrats in Congress, and your allies in the corporate media have been demanding a full release of the Epstein documents for months, including all the documents from the Epstein estate. So without hesitation, I subpoenaed all of the Jeffrey Epstein estate documents because I, as well as my Republican colleagues on the House Oversight Committee, we want to know what really happened, what went on, who was involved in these unspeakable crimes. We want justice for the survivors. That's why we're doing this investigation. So House Oversight obtained... All
right, so we know the rest of the story. They got the records, and they were able to show exactly who was involved. Now, also in a stunning example of these guys stepping in it, just as I said they were going to, Senator Chris Murphy, who appears to be just a little bit nervous, giving another interview once again to CNN, he is reminded of the fact that they have been begging for these files to be released for months on end. And now that they're coming out, it's actually turning out that just as we have been saying, as President Trump said, the damage is being done in one direction. It's being done against the Democrats. And take a listen.
You mentioned the investigations into Democrats who had been named in the files that were released by the Epstein estate. One of the things the president did say, and again, he signed it overnight, no signing ceremony, no TV cameras, no nothing, but he did put out a Truth Social release where he noted that Democrats have been mentioned, again, in what has been released so far. What if there are more names connected to the Democratic Party that come out as a result of this?
So what? I mean, yeah, I'm sure that there are Democrats in those files. There are Republicans in those files. There are, Wall Street executives who have no political affiliation. What we want is to understand who was involved in this. I mean, I don't think the president is so selfless that he was, stopping the release of these files for so long because he was protecting his friends. I just think it stands to reason that he's very much connected to this scandal. And we may or may not know the extent of that, because it could be that the president is going to try to find a way to redact any information connected to him from those files. But to me, it just doesn't matter the political affiliation. The law is the law. They need to release the files.
All right.
Well, this is not going well. It's definitely not going well for them. Let me also, real briefly, give you guys a special message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me say thank you so much to Rumble. And if you're looking for a smarter way to browse and enjoy your favorite content without ads, you've got to get the Perplexity Pro bundle with Rumble Premium for just $19.99 a month when you sign up before December 31st. Normally, that's a $29.99 value. With Rumble Premium, you're going to get ad-free viewing experiences across all your devices and access to exclusive premium content with no interruptions, just the videos and streams that you love anytime, anywhere. Plus, Perplexity Pro boosts your productivity with unlimited research, unlimited uploads, exclusive member perks, and access to the latest and most advanced AI models for faster, smarter answers every day. Save over 30% on this powerful bundle by heading to rumble.com/premium before December 31st and sign up and unlock your premium experience. Those of you on Rumble, you can use the QR code on screen. You can use the link below the video or the link that you see in the chat. Thank you so much to Rumble and Perplexity. All right, now, continuing. We also have what appears to be another act of judicial activism, this time coming out of Texas. Previously reported that the Fifth Circuit Court has overturned Texas's new congressional map. This was in a panel of judges' decisions 2-1. And the Fifth Circuit Judge Jerry E. Smith has issued a fairly passionate dissent against Judge Jeffrey Brown's decision, which effectively strikes down Texas's new map. He condemns the ruling as blatant judicial activism that harms Texans while benefiting George Soros and Gavin Newsom. Take a listen. Apparently, the judge was not given the normal amount of time to have his dissent written up and use a little bit more legal grace and precedent. But he says the main winners from Judge Brown's opinion are George Soros and Gavin Newsom. The obvious losers are the people of Texas and the rule of law. I dissent. In the interest of time, this dissent is admittedly disjointed. Usually, in dissenting from an opinion of this length, I would spend more days refining and reorganizing the dissent for purposes of impact and readability. But the approach is not reasonably possible here because these two judges have not allowed it. The resulting dissent is far from a literary masterpiece. If, however, there were a Nobel Prize for fiction, Judge Brown's opinion would be a prime candidate. Judge Brown could have saved himself and the readers a lot of time and effort by merely stating the following. I just don't like what the legislature did here. It was unnecessary, and it seems unfair to disadvantaged voters. I need to step in to make sure wiser heads prevail over the nakedly partisan and racially questionable actions of these zealous lawmakers. Just as I did to the lawmakers in Galveston County in Pkwy, I'm using my considerable clout as a federal district judge to put a stop to bad policy judgments. After all, I get paid to do what I think is right. That's a pretty good takedown. In 37 years as a federal judge, I've served on hundreds of 3-judge panels. This is the most blatant exercise of judicial activism that I have ever witnessed. There's an old joke. What's the difference between God and a federal district judge? Answer: God doesn't think he's a federal judge. Or a different version of that joke, an angel rushes to the head of the heavenly host and says, "We got a problem. God has delusions of grandeur." And the head angel calmly replies, "What makes you say that?" The first angel whispers, "He's wearing his robe and he keeps imagining he's a federal judge. Only this time, it isn't funny." All right, so once again, this is going to be another bad legal decision that will likely be overturned at a higher level. So the Texas redistricting efforts are not done yet, but this is prime example of when the judicial impeachment methodology should be put into action. Judge Jeffrey Brown is behaving as an activist in this instance. He is not paying attention to established precedent or the reasons behind this redistricting. He simply doesn't like what the legislature has done, and this, I'm hoping, will not stand. Wounds Are Us, thank you for the $20 rant. She says, as we enter midterm season, can you compare and contrast candidates? I know it can be time consuming, but I'm more than willing to help. So, oh gosh, you know what? We would have to sit down and we would have to look at so many of them. I think that I will as we get closer, especially if it comes down to decisions between multiple Republican candidates. I mean, I've done a couple of them already. There was the guy in, oh gosh, what is it? Kentucky or, yeah, I think it was Kentucky, the trash man who's running for Mitch McConnell's seat. I think that he is worth supporting. Certainly in Texas, I think that A.G. Paxton is the guy that you need to support. But yeah, if you've, say, got a list of hot Republican primary races that are coming up, Wounds Are Us, get a hold of me. Redpill78 at proton.me. And yeah, I think that it's totally worth the exercise. I don't know that I'm going to do it all across the country because that would be really time consuming. But I think that in the really hotly contested areas, we're going to have to do that. There's undoubtedly going to be certain races that are basically already decided. Obviously, I would say don't vote for any Democrats, and we can go ahead and just start there as a baseline. Sabrado says she will help too. Okay, thank you, my dear. Definitely, if you guys have people in your state and you know that there are hot contested primary races that are coming up, get a hold of me, redpill78@proton.me, and I will do my best to go ahead and highlight the ones that I think are going to be really important. All right, now, speaking of redistricting, the U.S. Attorney, Bill Asaley for California, has confirmed that Gavin Newsom broke the law. He used a discriminatory methodology drawing Latino districts. He did it explicitly to harm white voters and Republican voters prior to the 2026 midterms. So there is currently an attempt to get this new map struck down in court. The DOJ is suing the state of California. Bill Asaley says that California used race. They wanted to draw these Latino districts because they have so many Latino people, maybe not voters, but in California, you never know. It doesn't really matter if they're illegal or not. They said specifically, we are drawing Latino districts. Again, that is against the law. This should get struck. Let's go ahead and listen to Bill Asaley.
Evidence of that, and I'm not sure what the court based that on. Our lawsuit in California says just that. California used race. They wanted to draw Latino districts, and they said that. This isn't a theory or something. The legislators said that when they're passing this map, that they wanted an additional Latino district. So if that is enough to strike down the Texas map, then this one should get stricken down as well. Although the Texas maps, we do believe, are lawful and constitutional, and we do think that's going to make its way quickly up to the Supreme Court.
Well, that would mean that the California redistricting would probably be legal too.
No, because we actually have evidence that the legislators improperly used race to draw the maps. They said it, and they've said it on record. And we're going to have a court hearing on December 3rd, and we'll get an answer very quickly.
Well, it's interesting. The Brennan Center for Justice talks a lot about this, and that there are some 98 cases that are being tracked with legal challenges related to gerrymandering. All told, they report 49 cases raised allegations of race discrimination, often including, referring back to the Voting Rights Act, to various other state constitutions, racial gerrymandering. What do you make of that being used so frequently in these lawsuits?
That's the one thing the Supreme Court's looking at, is a provision of the Voting Rights Act that we think sometimes does get abused.
And that is what Harmeet Dillon is currently taking up with the U.S. Supreme Court. So that will likely be decided in the very near future. Now, we've gotten some brand new reporting on jobs, and that's what Filter Dog was pointing to earlier in the program. 119,000 new jobs with 2.57 million native-born Americans re-entering the job market. This is just since President Trump entered office in January. The results are a little bit delayed from September 2025. We would have gotten them a little bit earlier if it wasn't for the Schumer shutdown. These are well past expectations, and we did also have a big spike in jobs in August. Now, since President Trump took office, 2.57 million native-born Americans have gained employment, and over 1 million foreign-born Americans have lost their employment. This is a major contrast to the previous economy under Joseph Robinette Biden, the auto pen. Most of those new jobs were in the private sector, not the public sector or government jobs. That's also really good. Vice President Vance says the September jobs report indicates most of that job growth is benefiting native-born American citizens. Now, since President Trump entered the White House, his policies have really begun impacting the economy. This is another thing that I think people need to really pay attention to. The economy is not something that can simply be turned around overnight. It does take time for the policies to begin impacting our lives on a day-to-day basis. And as Brad and I were talking about last night on Altered State, we are probably going to see the biggest direct impacts be visible next spring and summer. Now, the number of foreign-born workers slumped from a record 33.7 million in March of this year to 32.1 million, again, a drop of 1.6 million. That's been offset by a slow but consistent increase in Native Americans being brought into the job market. Now, native-born workers and where we were at had been literally unchanged for the 6 years prior, from 2019 until early 2025. And this is the first time that it started to rise again. It's increased from 131.2 million in March to now a record high of 133.2 million in September. Also, Christopher Counselor for the Treasury Secretary, Joseph Lavorna, had joined Steve Bannon on War Room earlier this morning following the news on the economy, and he said the labor market is only improving because of President Trump. That is objective fact. He also called on the Fed and Jerome Powell to lower interest rates once again. I don't know if that's going to happen, but Powell is only going to be around for a few more months, and then President Trump is going to have the opportunity to put somebody else into that position, and that should also make a huge difference. Now, speaking of foreign-born workers, a couple, a business-owning couple in Michigan, the Detroit area, have now also been charged with using nearly 250 illegal alien workers for their plumbing business. They earned $74 million in revenue. Now, it was just announced that employers who employ illegal aliens are now going to be charged in President Trump's America. I don't know if, well, this must be a result of that announcement being made. I think that it's very clear how I feel on this. I've said it time and time again. We simply can't go after the illegal aliens who are entering the job market. They got in the country, okay? And anybody who hires them is making it possible for them to stay. Those people are breaking the law. They need to have the book thrown at them. We need to incentivize American businesses to hire American people. And if we're not punishing the American businesses who hire these illegal aliens, they have no incentive to do things any differently. But the worst part about this is not only were they hiring illegal aliens, they were also giving them housing inside rundown motels, essentially packing these people like sardines inside these buildings. They were really taking advantage of them and essentially putting them into a position of indentured servitude.
All right, now to that Plymouth Township couple accused of using hundreds of illegal workers in a secret staffing scheme for their plumbing business.
And that couple's business reportedly earned tens of millions of dollars. 7 News Detroit obtained a copy of the criminal complaint accusing the couple of conspiracy, transporting and harboring unauthorized aliens, and money laundering.
7 News Detroit reporter Darren Cunningham is talking to a neighboring business and getting insight into the case from a former federal prosecutor.
This is the business in question that has a Metro Detroit couple in hot water with federal investigators.
It's not just simply an immigration case that's charged, it's also money laundering.
And these are the federal documents investigators say detail the inner workings of the plumbing empire built by Moises Orduña Rios and his wife Raquel over a 5-year period.
Now, are they immigrants? Did they come here legally, or did they come here through some other method? It sounds like they are American citizens. But you hear those names and you got to ask the question.
Plymouth Township couple owned Orduña Plumbing, Manpower Supply, and allegedly hired undocumented workers, took their passports, and crammed them into tight living quarters. These photos from the criminal complaint. The federal complaint focuses on Rochester, New York, but Michigan, Ohio, and North Carolina are also mentioned as places the company operates. According to the complaint, out of 253 workers, only 6 were in the U.S. legally and permitted to work. The complaint claims the husband and wife generated $74 million in their plumbing business that was based out of Michigan.
So whenever you use money that is unlawful and you deposit it into a bank and you manipulate the banking system, that's money laundering. And that's what the government's alleging here.
Former federal.
Now, the other thing to mention here is if these people are illegal aliens coming to work in the United States of America, does anybody really believe that they're like following code to do the work correctly? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen a lot of construction sites that are being run by illegal aliens, and a lot of those houses are a mess. You've got like top plates that are not connected. You've got improperly constructed walls. You've got walls that are not anchored into the concrete. I mean, the list of violations are just horrible. And of course, those building companies are charging sometimes millions of dollars for these homes that are basically put together like a pile of sticks. I've seen houses get blown over by the wind because they're not properly secured to the foundation. And if I had a couple of illegal aliens come into my house, do a plumbing job, I have no way of knowing whether or not they're doing that job correctly. I mean, you guys ever seen plumbing in the third world? It's not exactly up to snuff in terms of our building codes.
prosecutor Matthew Schneider reviewed the 27-page complaint, which mentions investigators interviewing the workers on numerous occasions and the company's use of the WhatsApp messaging app.
In this case, you've got physical evidence, statement of the people arrested, and the government was listening to the communications of the defendants. So you actually have all three of those things.
Bang.
And whenever you have a criminal defendant speaking and being recorded, and the government has that evidence, that's extremely powerful, and the burden on that is really hard to overcome.
So it sounds to me like this investigation has been ongoing secretly for some time, and the announcement of the federal government going after employers that were hiring illegal workers likely was timed to coincide with the public announcement of this case being filed. Right there. What do I tell you guys all the time? It's all about timing. All right. We don't need to just hear things that make us feel good. We want to see the results of enforcement activities, and that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Company headquarters is in Plymouth Township, where we stopped to see if anyone was present who could speak to the allegations. No one was there. We then went next door.
It's pretty crazy how big the operation was, with very little activity that was there.
Jeff Goebbels, a golf pro, runs his business in an adjacent office space. He said he'd see about 3 people in and out of the office, and he's stunned by the allegations.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening that they could get that deep. It just looked like a normal business that I didn't see a lot of work trucks coming in and out, but that it was that detailed with the immigration issues that are going on today, it's pretty interesting.
The couple, whose address comes back to this $1.5 million mansion in Plymouth Township,
of course
were released Tuesday on conditions after appearing in Michigan Eastern District Court. The couple's next court date is scheduled for December 2nd in New York.
Well, look at that. They had to go to court in Michigan. They're going to court in New York. I bet you they're going to go to court in Ohio and Pennsylvania as well. Hopefully these people are going to be put in prison for the rest of their lives. They absolutely deserve it. Now, let's go back and take a walk back through time. A time where things were not nearly being run as well as they are today. A brand new report that we've received has shown us that during the Biden years, it wasn't just D.C., it wasn't just a couple of other Democrat-run cities, but violent crime rates were literally out of control, rising across American cities all around the nation. Now, the regime had consistently told us that violent crime was going down, that there were historic reductions, that there were great successes, but all you had to do was look out your front door, and it was quite clear that something was not jiving. The National Crime Victimization Survey data that we've just received from the Trump administration shows that maybe while suburban and rural crime remained nearly unchanged, violent crime in urban areas surged by, get this, 61% between 2019 and 2024. The rate is now 46% higher than the national average and more than double the rate in rural areas. Property crime shows similar gaps because most violent crimes tend to go unreported. These increases never showed up in FBI figures. That allowed the Biden regime to push this misleading narrative that violent crime was going down. In many of these Democrat-run cities, persistently high crime has become normalized and enforcement remains weak. They simply don't have cops out there doing the enforcement activities, and these terrible things are allowed to happen. Most Americans view crime as a major issue. I would say that pretty much every single person I know, if they have half a brain cell, understand that in order to have a happy, safe, and secure life, violent crime cannot be the norm. The majority of people that you talk to are also going to approve of the response from the administration. That includes the deployment of federal troops, the strengthening of local policing. The only people who don't like those things are the people who want violent crime to continue because they are collectivists or violent communist anarchists. Democrats are now shifting their messaging, acknowledging the rising crime, and they're now promoting gun control, as they often do, as the solution ahead of the 2026 midterms. But you and I know that gun control does one thing and one thing only. It takes firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, and it makes sure that they remain in the hands of violent recidivist criminals, illegal alien or American born. Criminals can get access to guns. Gun control does nothing to stop that type of crime. A private poll commissioned by Giffords and an allied Democrat nonprofit found that voters overwhelmingly prioritize safety. And guess what? They trust Republicans a lot more on crime and violent crime control. That is not surprising. Now, the discrepancies that we saw between the Biden administration claims that violent crime was going down and the lived experience of American citizens in cities all around the country stems from that massive reporting gap that we have seen reported time and time again. It all began in 2021. That's when the FBI mandated this transition to the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Once that happened, participation in the reporting of these violent crimes absolutely collapsed. Major cities, which include the names that you would imagine are on this list, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, all of them, failed to report complete data for 2021, and nearly 40% of all police agencies, which cover 35% of the United States population, were simply missing from that year's statistics. Even in 2022, only 8% of Florida agencies, 9% of Pennsylvania agencies even bothered to submit crime data. That left critical information absent from that federal reporting, and it was allowing them to lie to the American people. The National Crime Victimization Survey shows that less than half of all violent crimes, roughly 41 to 48%, are ever reported to the police, which means that the numbers the FBI were reporting miss most of that criminal activity. The survey in 2024 found that violent crime in urban areas reached 40.5 victimizations per 1,000 residents, compared to 19 in suburban areas and only 15 in rural areas, demonstrating the 61% surge since 2019. And in September of 2024, the FBI quietly revised their 2022 crime data. Remember, we reported on that at the time. Initially, it was reported a 2.1% decrease, but after they revised it, it became a 4.5% increase. That added thousands of unaccounted murders, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults. The agency did not acknowledge these revisions in any sort of press release. They kind of wanted it to fly under the radar. Police in Milwaukee reported a 7% rise in robberies, while the FBI claimed a 13% drop. That's a 21-point disparity. In Nashville, local data recorded 6,900 aggravated assaults in 2023, but the FBI only counted 5,941. That leaves another 1,000 violent crimes that are simply missing from the national statistics. In 2022, only 21.4% of rapes and sexual assault cases and 36.8% of simple assaults were even reported to federal law enforcement, or all law enforcement, rather. So this underreporting helps explain why the NCVS data shows far higher crime rates than the FBI ever did, especially in the urban areas where it's happening a lot more. Distrust of local and federal law enforcement has grown a lot under liberal prosecutors and these defund the police policies. If you know that the person who victimized you is not going to be arrested, or they are going to be arrested and they're going to get immediately let out with no cash bail, or if they are arrested, they're not going to be prosecuted, why are you going to bother going through the process of putting you and your family in that position? Now, Chicago, probably one of the worst places we can see this. It illustrates how this manipulated data, low reporting rates, plea bargaining all mask the true scale of violence in these heavily minority neighborhoods. FBI data still excludes 23% of the population. That leaves tens of millions of uncounted crimes taking place, including several million residents of major urban areas. That gap conceals more than 50,000 violent crimes in communities similar to the Chicago's west and south sides. And plea bargaining that I just mentioned hides even more crimes because, of course, they only count the crime that ends up getting plea bargained. They don't count what the person was initially charged with. There are 40% of felonies that get pled down nationwide, which means that thousands of these violent felonies in Chicago never appear in federal statistics. 97% of Chicago's murder victims are also black or Hispanic, so the undercount falls hardest on the minority minority residents. Now, when combined with plea deals and non-prosecution policies, the actual violent crime rate in Chicago among Black and Hispanic neighborhoods is more than likely 30 to 45% higher than the official numbers that you're going to be hearing. National data shows a nominal decline in violent crime, but Chicago's very high homicide levels and low clearance rates, which means they don't generally figure out who did the murder among these minority communities, they face a much greater danger than the average nationally would imply. And the experience in Chicago reflects a broader national pattern where underreporting, overwhelmed courts, progressive policies, all of it produces misleadingly optimistic crime statistics. There is no transparency. There are no solutions aimed to tackle poverty or the distrust that the community has in police or in prosecutors. There is little opportunity in these neighborhoods. Oftentimes, people grow up with the idea that they're going to grow up and become a thug, or they're going to join a gang, or they're going to become a dope boy on the corner. So they enter into this cycle of violence, and it's been documented now that President Trump and this administration is taking a look at it honestly. The liberal prosecutors are one of the biggest reasons why we have weakened accountability in cities like Chicago. In Chicago, you've got police recovering about 12,000 illegal guns in 2023, but only 40% of felony gun possession arrests ever result in convictions, and then plea bargaining reduces 25 to 40% of felonies to misdemeanors, meaning only 19 to 24% of gun recoveries ever even lead to felony convictions. The homicide clearance rate is only 45%. More than half of homicides are ever solved. And in predominantly Black neighborhoods, the 2021 clearance rate by prosecution was only 21.7%. 78% of the time, they don't figure out who committed the murder. That means that you can basically go to Chicago and get away with murder. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who you all know very well, he declined prosecutions by 35% in 2022 compared to what he was doing in 2019. Misdemeanor prosecutions resulting in jail time fell by 78%. Kim Foxx in Chicago, she dropped 25,000 cases, including felony murder and rape, and former Los Angeles DA George Gascon only saw 1.4% of violent sex crimes end in conviction from 2018 to 2024. Over a period of 6 years, only 1.4% of the people committing violent sex crimes ever got justice. Chicago, arrests are made in only about 1 in 7 violent crimes in 2024. That is a 20-year decline that they've been on. These prosecutors that have eliminated cash bail and refused to prosecute misdemeanors, routinely downgrading felonies, they create the conditions under which this violent crime has flourished. They are making the problem worse. And if you have ever been to one of these left-wing cities under the thumb of a left-wing prosecutor, you know all too well that I am telling you facts. Cities with the strictest gun laws, like Chicago, always had the most crime. The cities experiencing the sharpest crime surges share a common trait: some of the nation's strictest gun control regimes. As I said, gun control takes the firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, and it keeps them in the hands of those who would victimize you because they are criminals. Illinois, including Chicago, where it's based, they received an A- grade from the Giffords Law Center in 2021, and they ranked 8th nationally for the strength of their gun laws. New York City enforces the most restrictive gun laws in the country. Their licensing rules and firearm limits are stricter than places like LA or Chicago or Philadelphia. And California, which is where Los Angeles is based, consistently ranks among the top states for gun control strictness. Cook County maintains bans on assault weapons, which is an arbitrary name, and large capacity magazines. A regular magazine on an AR-15 should be at about 30 rounds. But of course, you can get them 45. You can get drums much higher, but they want to cap it at 10, which, obviously you're going to go to the range. You're going to be constantly filling up those mags. Anyways, the strict regulations in Chicago have remained even after the Supreme Court struck down their handgun ban in 2010. In California, they just forced the redesign of Glocks because thugs in the hood were putting switches in their Glocks and turning them into machine guns. It is the device that went into the Glock that turned it into a machine gun. And it's not something that they have the right to regulate. The NFA is already strictly enforced, and it's just another overreach by the government of the state of California. Now, even though Glock has changed the design to make it impossible for the old switches to be put in, anybody with a little bit of knowledge and know-how has already figured out how to add switches to the new Glock Gen V, which is what you would basically expect from enterprising young youth. SR Cell 343 says Texas loaded up the country on illegal immigrants in sanctuary cities, but they are still here and about to cause havoc. Texas moved buses and planes of people across the country. They did. And they did that because the only place that these people were congregating was largely in Texas. They were taking the brunt of this, and the administration under Biden refused to do anything about it. We did the same thing down here in Florida. We sent all of those illegal aliens that they would catch to places like Martha's Vineyard, New York City, and Chicago, rather than just allowing them to stay here and be a burden on the people of Florida. There were a lot of people who were very upset about that at the beginning, but those actions by Greg Abbott and Governor DeSantis did a lot to inform the people of those other cities of the problems that we were facing down here in the South. And all of those people are being removed. The fact of the matter is those people were being let in by the administration, the federal government. And if they had not been sent to those Democrat-run cities where they were basically begging for people to come anyways, then they would have stayed down here. They would have been a burden on us, and it would have been a problem that only we would have had to deal with. So I don't have any love lost for DeSantis or Abbott for doing that. I do think that it was a brilliant PR move. Even though it pissed people off, it affected the result that they were hoping to affect, which was to inform people of what we were dealing with down here. All right. Now, we have an update from FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino on the 764 network. And I've been reporting on the 764 network for a long time. There are people on X who will tell you, former FBI agents, that the 764 network is not something to worry about. I would have to say that if you haven't been paying attention, then you haven't figured out that the 764 network is real. These people are global. They are victimizing children. They are convincing them to produce abhorrent material. They are sharing it with their pedophile friends all around the world. People are victimizing, mutilating themselves. They are having these kids kill animals. They are doing serious psychological harm. And the people who are telling you to stop talking about 764 are the ones that I think deserve the attention. They need to be looked into, because it makes no sense to pretend that this is not a real threat. There is attention that is being paid on this by this current administration because 764 is real. They are doing immeasurable harm to youth all around the world. This is a satanic, pedophile, nihilistic network of accelerationists who are not only hoping to get their jollies on victimizing kids, but they are also hoping to destroy society in general by targeting the children of the younger generation. And they did a lot of damage during the Biden years, because the Bidens and the administration under Biden said that 764 was nothing to be worried about. Well, it's always been something to be worried about, and I am damn sure excited about the fact that this administration is taking it seriously. Thank you so much, Deputy Director Bongino and Director Patel, for paying attention to the people who are victimizing our children. The director and I, in conjunction with our employees in the field, have emphasized taking down the 764 network. And I want to update you on a couple of the latest cases. For those who may not know, the 764 network is a heinous child exploitation ring that often targets children online and coerces them into acts of violence, self-harm, animal abuse, suicide, and sexual abuse. At the beginning of the year, our teams redoubled our efforts to go after these networks and eliminate them. We have more than 300 investigations connected to this network going on nationwide, not even globally, as we speak, and that number is growing. It's a top priority for us. Now, for the people who have told you, don't look at 764, it's only 300 investigations. Think about how many individual children those 300 perverts could directly target, victimize, and damage psychologically for the rest of their lives. And then think about the ripple effect of every single one of those kids. What if each and every one of these 300 investigations was targeting and abusing 10 children? All right, so then you've got, say, 30,000 children who are, 3,000 children that are being abused. If it's 100, you've got 30,000 children. The numbers grow exponentially, and then each and every one of those kids are going to have an effect in their own community, spreading it out even worse. And a lot of those kids end up becoming, if the abuse goes far enough, the likelihood of an abuse victim becoming an abuser increases exponentially. Let me say, Texas has the largest National Guard. They could have closed the border instead. Well, the thing about it is they did eventually, and I agree with you. They could have closed it, but it also wouldn't have addressed the fact that they didn't have the power because of the supremacy clause of the Constitution. They couldn't eject those people and send them back to Mexico. There needed to be action from the federal government. I am on board with you. That could have been done differently. But I also believe that there was input from President Trump because the problem was much bigger than many people realized. Continuing, he says, they could have closed the border instead. A republic doesn't need permission to close the border. Bless you, Red Pill. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. But again, because of the supremacy clause, what were they going to do with those people? I mean, they were already here. They didn't have the power to eject them. The only thing they could do was send them to states where the people were begging for them to show up. And Wounds Are Us says, Abbott is horrible. I have heard this from so many people. Texas is not well served by him. He has taken so much Islam money to facilitate their takeover. Can't wait to send you info. Yeah, I have heard that from a lot of residents of Texas, that Governor Abbott has at best been a mixed bag. But again, in terms of the mimetic power of those illegal aliens being sent to Democrat-run cities, because it forced them to put their money where their mouth was and essentially expose them in a way that they weren't getting exposed before. Because if you guys will remember, a lot of those Democrats were saying that the problem was not nearly as bad as we were saying it was down here. And then once they had to admit it, they basically just had to eat crow. All right, continuing with Dan's announcement here. Out of FBI Baltimore, recently our teams worked with partners to arrest an individual who had allegedly targeted 5 victims, one as young as 13. The individual is now in federal custody, and we expect more information to be released on this case soon. Out of Arizona, recently we had another case where an indictment revealed an individual in federal custody had been found allegedly targeting kids as an affiliate of 764. The 9 victims involved were between the ages of 11 and 15 years old. Some of the allegations involved distributing of child pornography, cyberstalking, animal crushing, that just kills me, and even conspiring to provide material to support terrorists. I cannot emphasize enough, this is a major issue in America that not enough people know about. We are asking all parents to please be on guard, check in with your kids, monitor their internet usage, consider your options for putting safeguards in place that limit what these networks can reach. In the meantime, the FBI will keep working day and night to destroy this network. It's a top priority. We are making progress, but the work isn't done. God bless America and those who defend her. This is another thing that I saw Kyle Seraphin say, well, just watch what your kids are looking at online. That's a lot like the Democrats saying, don't blow up the narco boats in the Caribbean, just deal with it once the drugs get to America. We need a multi-pronged approach in a technologically savvy world where these people have figured out ways that they can get to your kids, even if you think you know what they're looking at. Continuing here. A little bit more on crime. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro has given us an update on the surge to fight crime in Washington, D.C. Since Jeanine Pirro has been the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, she and her office have done incredible things to keep the people of Washington, D.C. safe. Let's go ahead and listen to Judge Jeanine.
Everyone, it's Judge Jeanine. Here I am in D.C., and we're still talking about the surge. It's been a little over 3 months. From August the 7th to November the 17th. And the number of arrests are 6,362. The number of guns seized are 610 guns. Now, you've got to put that in perspective. And I'm going to do that by comparing the numbers from what it was in 2023. The violent crimes were 60% higher in 2023 than they are right now as a result of the surge. Carjackings in 2023 were 80% higher. Homicides were 72% higher.
Wow.
And violent gun crimes were 75% higher. And you can see that the numbers go down a little bit in 24, but not really that much. But the difference, even between 90 days before the surge and the surge, is dramatic. It shows a difference that it makes when law enforcement works together, when the focus is making sure that criminals are apprehended, when the deterrent effect of law enforcement being on the street is ever present, then we're able to really protect the people who live in the district.
If you want to keep people safe, you have to enforce the law. Laws mean nothing. Doesn't matter that they're on the books if they are not being enforced. And in addition to that, because we've had such a degradation in moral and ethical responsibility and just teaching these things to kids in school, at home, in church, these institutions that used to exist and simply are not present in the lives of children as they should be nowadays, people lose their way. We've got to teach kids how to be good people. Just like we've got to teach kids how government works so that they can hold their leaders accountable. Now, checking in with the case on James Comey, a DOJ official speaking about the case against Comey says the U.S. attorney and grand jury in the case versus Comey operated exactly as the law requires. There is nothing in the record to suggest misconduct, irregularity, or confusion. Claims to the contrary are simply unsupported. Who is saying that? The magistrate judge who claimed that Lindsay Halligan may have done something improper, even though he had no evidence to suggest that. It was simply his assertion because he was confused. He is not a criminal court judge. The magistrate judge's ruling rests on legal theories that the Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected. History and precedent. Grand jury secrecy is not optional, and it cannot be pierced based on speculation or misinterpretation of the records. We go back to the response here in the United States versus Comey. The foreperson of the grand jury reported that 12 or more grand jurors did not concur in finding an indictment as to proposed count one, only count one. So, consequently, the foreperson signed an indictment that contained only the 2 counts for which the grand jury had determined that probable cause existed to indict. The 2 charges contained in that indictment are identical to the second and third charges that were included in the proposed indictment that was provided to the grand jury. This judge, this magistrate judge, simply is he is not very intelligent. Okay, that's like the most polite way that I can say it. He doesn't take on felony cases. He wasn't a judge prior to becoming this magistrate judge. All he is supposed to do is oversee what is happening. He is not actually prosecuting Comey. He is fundamentally misinformed about what's happening in this case. I don't think that the case against James Comey is in danger of getting tossed out or anything like that. I'd also... Oh, you know what? Hold on. I meant to talk about this before I talked about James Comey, but we'll talk about the announcement from Pam Bondi in a moment because we have another update from the defense team for James Comey. Now, we don't know for certain whether or not former FBI Director James Comey will ever face what many here in the public see as true justice. I'd think that he will get there, because I think that there will be superseding indictments that will be brought against James Comey in terms of the grand conspiracy case that will be brought before a grand jury in January. But it's clear, regardless of whatever happens down here in Florida or up there in the Eastern District of Virginia, James Comey's got a big legal team. I've already told you he's paying for lawyers all over the country. So he's going to do everything that he can to try and stop justice from being served. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Comey and his legal team are even considering what's being called a long shot defense strategy, or maybe several of them. Basically, Comey is trying to make the case that this indictment against him should get tossed out because it's allegedly a form of political retaliation from President Trump. The argument is typically a long shot, but it's become a popular defense strategy after President Trump explicitly urged the Justice Department to bring these charges against his perceived foes. We know, however, from the evidence that we've already seen, we saw James Comey testifying before Congress. Not only did he obstruct, not only did he lie, but he also oversaw the leaking of highly classified material and very sensitive material. There is no indictment, one of James Comey's lawyers stated. Obviously, Comey is going to use whatever he can to try to get out of it. But the fact of the matter is that James Comey's lawyers are getting paid to say whatever will get him off. So when you hear a statement like that, don't let it get in your head, because the evidence that will be presented at trial is going to be unimpeachable. I am not worried about that. I'm also not worried about the Letitia James case. I'm also not particularly worried that the Department of Justice is not paying attention to issues that I care about. I already talked about 764. Well, guess what? Pam Bondi just announced a DOJ probe into a major child trafficking network that was just busted. They were operating down here in Florida, but they were working nationwide. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar child trafficking network. Take a listen to this.
Just this week, Joint Task Force Alpha took 4 major enforcement actions. Right here in Tampa, we unsealed the indictment charging 12 defendants operating a massive, right here in Tampa, a massive illegal smuggling ring. The defendants engaged in a conspiracy to bring illegal aliens from Cuba to the U.S. for profit. They coached their clients, including children, who came to airports alone, came to our country alone, were put on planes for connecting flights, lied to Border Patrol agents due to coaching, and law enforcement. They charged up to $40,000 per victim. They used Zelle to transfer over $7 million over the course of this scheme, and I believe had profits, cash of over $18 million.
An $18 million child trafficking network. Now, the one thing that I want you to really hone in there, besides the horror of the reality of this network, is that they used Zelle, okay, which is a banking tool which directly connects to people's names, numbers, email addresses. So that means that likely from this network, we are probably going to see arrests and indictments all around the nation. This is just the beginning of the busting of this network. These are just the people who were running it that are being wrapped up right now. So keep your eyes on this case. This is going to be a major nationwide case. Now here, one more clip from Catherine Herridge. She says the Comey case is about much, much more than allegedly lying to Congress. The FBI under Kash Patel has declassified records, not only including Arctic haze, but others that show this highly classified information was being leaked to reporters about the basis of Comey's controversial decisions and the Clinton email probe. Even the Columbia law professor, who was Daniel Richmond, Comey's de facto PR rep, he admitted to investigators when they questioned him that the information Comey was asking him to share was highly classified and it should be protected. Of course, he has yet to respond to repeated requests for comments, but it's good for you to hear that Dan's own statements to federal investigators about the highly classified nature of the information Comey was asking him to share is on record. Undoubtedly, that will be presented to a jury. I'm certain it was probably presented to the grand jury. So James Comey, despite whatever his best defense or the expense of his lawyers is going to be, I don't think that he's going to be able to get out of this one. Let's see. Wounds R. Us also says Kyle Seraphin is a jerk. Challenge him and he responds with name calling and insults. No facts. It's true. I mean, I've seen him block so many people. SR Cell 343 says, brother, no need to respond. Well, of course, I will definitely respond to you. I've listened to you for years and I'm friends with Tina Peters. Oh, good. How is she doing? People keep telling me that she's got pneumonia and she's not doing well. I know that she had a portion of her lung removed at one time for lung cancer. I agree with you about the admin and Texas comms. The people had to learn. Truly revere what you are doing to save the USA. Thank you so much. And please send Tina my love every single day. We are praying for her out here. I really hope that something is done to get her out of that Colorado hellhole and that eventually she will be set free. I know that there is obviously the jurisdictional aspect of the state charges, but the DOJ is working behind the scenes. So please tell Tina that we love her and that we are all praying for her every single day. All right, now, I'd also like to play this clip for you from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who also admits something that I think all of us were all aware of. The fact that the Democrats had built a shadow government using a web of NGOs. It was a coordinated network to undermine and ultimately topple our constitutional republic. This is why that when President Trump came back into power, some of the first things he did was to dismantle the USAID money pipeline that was going to fund all of these criminal NGOs. Take a listen.
Today, we are announcing that we have stopped all grant funding that's being abused by NGOs to facilitate illegal immigration into this country. So it's amazing to me the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent by the federal government that has been sent to NGOs to facilitate this invasion of our country. So I've taken action to stop those funds, to reevaluate them, and to make sure that we're actually using the taxpayer dollars in a way that strengthens this country, that keeps us safe. So I think people are curious when we look at grants that are given out by federal agencies at how they're utilized, and that evaluation needs to be done. We're not spending another dime to help the destruction of this country. We're going to make sure that we follow through on what President Trump has promised, and that's to make sure that we're securing our border, departing those who are here illegally, and committing criminal actions, and that our taxpayer dollars aren't spent to help it.
And Madam Secretary, I don't think people fully understand.
Now, also, I would like to point out that just because we've cut off the ongoing federal pipeline that was going from U.S. taxpayer money into the coffers of these NGOs, is it immediately going to have the same type of impact that I think people are hoping to see? Because obviously those groups have cash reserves. There are also private interests such as George Soros and other big funding moves like the Tides Foundation that were also sending that money out and putting it into the hands of these NGOs. So it is a multi-pronged and layered effect that will eventually be seen. But I think that that's also part of the reason why we've seen the recent call for investigations and prosecutions of groups like George Soros's Open Societies Foundation. We're getting there, but it just can't all happen all at once. It is something that will happen, and the effect will be seen. But I think to a large degree, the fangs have already been taken out of those groups. Take a look over the last couple of months at the No Kings protest as an example. A lot of people were expecting them to be far more violent, far more disruptive, far more damaging. And they basically showed up and then poof, they were gone. No impact at all. Maybe a couple of photos, a couple of videos. But here in my area, the No Kings protest, it was like a handful of disaffected boomers who hate Donald Trump because they've got TDS and they're probably not going to survive as a result of it. We've got far more of us here in America who care about this nation and want to see it survive and thrive.
And the role that NGOs play, many NGOs play, in facilitating illegal immigration. I just want to share these numbers with everybody up on the screen. We spend over $380 million, did in 2024, for sheltering and service programs for illegal immigrants. But the vast network of NGOs that help facilitate it through Panama, through Mexico, and make it a landing spot here in the United States is a massive contributor here to illegal immigration. So what you're telling us today is that now stops? At least the federal funding of that stops?
Yes, through the Department of Homeland Security, we have stopped spending those dollars to fund those NGOs. And, well, what's been so revealing is that many of these NGOs actually have infrastructure and operations set up in Mexico on that side of the border that.
How much of their operations are being funded by narcotics trafficking? Did anybody ever take that into account, the actions that we're engaging in the Caribbean Sea? Taking out these narco trafficking boats, stopping the drugs from being able to even reach the United States of America or reach it to Mexico? How much of an impact has that had?
Are telling those illegal immigrants to come to them and they will get them across the border. So they're not just operating in the United States, they're operating outside of the United States to help make it easier for those who want to break our laws.
Right.
And well, I was one of those Americans that years ago, when somebody said NGO to me, I thought, oh, that's amazing. That's a nonprofit that's out there telling somebody about Jesus or spreading faith and salvation or doing good work and charitable work, helping people that are less fortunate. And then I realized over the years it's been perverted into this shadow government. An NGO is sometimes an operation that does things that the government cannot do, can't legally do. So they create an entity to use government dollars, taxpayer dollars, to do something that the federal government isn't allowed to do, to do a shadow government operation that really has been used recently to undermine our country's national security.
I feel like Secretary Noem is speaking my language. All right. Before we continue, I've got a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, I want to share with you very quickly about a story of a farming family supporting this channel. 8 years ago, they had a brother return from Afghanistan with significant injuries. They watched as he became a shell of his former self. He was struggling with his health. We can't share his exact story because of restrictions on privacy laws, but friends kept suggesting CBD. So they tried dozens of CBD products. They began to create their own products, and they started making it to help their friends and family so that they could have CBD that they knew was going to be clean and as powerful as possible. Then doctors started asking if they could carry it, and it really took off. And now they speak at medical conventions, and they help many people throughout the United States. While a lot of companies have 1 to 10 compounds in their CBD oil, this oil has up to 50. They have 8 things that make them different. They make balms, gummies, pet products, etc., and it's called Emerald Med. You should check these guys out, and if you get their CBD and you don't notice a big difference, then they'll actually provide you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you want to support a company that supports my channel and many others here at Rumble, also supporting free speech with their marketing dollars, and you need a source for CBD that's real, they are running an early Black Friday deal right now. You can click the link below to try Emerald Med for 40% off today. Get extreme muscle and joint relief, support quality sleep, or even daytime calm. They're worth a try at least once. Just click the link below and use the code for 40% off for up to 2 items today. You can also use the QR code that you see on screen or that link that you see below. Thank you very much to them once again for being a supporter of the channel. All right, now, next up on the docket, the main event for the day, President Trump responding to that really blatant video that we played a couple of days ago. Members of Congress, former members, allegedly former members of the CIA, the military-industrial complex, coming before the current members of the intelligence community and the military and suggesting that they should defy orders from the chain of command and from the president of the United States. Well, President Trump woke up this morning. Maybe he saw it late last night for the very first time, but he was totally incensed after he heard about these 6 congressional Democrats that I showed you the other day and I featured on the thumbnail of today's video. They were calling literally for members of the military and the intelligence community to commit treason against the United States of America. I said it the other day. You said it in the chat the other day. We said this cannot stand. We don't know exactly where those videos were filmed, but unfortunately, if they film them in the halls of Congress, then they likely are going to have the protection of the speech and debate clause. Now, treason rises to a new level. So I don't know exactly how they're going to pursue this, but they are pursuing it. Senators Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan and Mark Kelly of Arizona, Representatives Chris DeLuzio of Pennsylvania, Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania, Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire, and Jason Crow of Colorado posted this video 2 days ago, essentially ordering these lifetime military and intelligence professionals to betray President Trump in the chain of command and implement what can only be described as a soft coup, hoping to render him powerless to carry out his policies, very similar to the resistance of the first administration. They said that the Trump administration is pitting the American military and intelligence community against the American people, and that those in those communities that they were speaking to swore an oath to the Constitution, and essentially whatever President Trump or the chain of command told them to do was likely unconstitutional. So they really didn't have any examples of what an unlawful or illegal order would be, and everything that I've reported on since President Trump came back into office has been legal. I know, much to the chagrin of a lot of people out there, they wanted President Trump to come in and do something really grand, something that was just fire and fury. But President Trump has been remarkably restrained, and I think that he's done that on purpose. I think that he wanted to go through this process of proving the powers inherent in the office of the executive, and he needed to be able to get all of his people into place so that once we get this all sorted out, we're going to be able to go hard as we possibly can. Think about the ruling in the D.C. court. Right now, there are a number of cases that are challenging President Trump's use of the National Guard. Once those cases have been fully decided, there will be no barriers to President Trump deploying the National Guard around the country, especially in areas where it's necessary, but perhaps in areas where you have seditious conspiracy taking place. So let me actually show you President Trump's truths so you can see exactly what he was saying. So we posted on Truth Social. It's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Each one of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Absolutely. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example must be set. And then he later added again, really bad and dangerous for our country. This is really bad and dangerous for our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up with a question mark. President DJT. So to eliminate any confusion that Trump was dead serious about putting these quislings on trial, he then retruthed several posts that agreed with him. A number of people on Truth Social said domestic terrorist Democrats always causing chaos and destruction, destroying people's lives. Anything these traitors disagree with is what they consider an illegal order. They are all a disgrace to their uniforms. I think they should be charged with sedition. Also, save those tapes and run them when the next Democommie is in office. It's called a seditious conspiracy, and every one of them should be frog-marched out of their homes at 3 a.m. with Fox News cameras filming the whole thing. Absolutely incredible to see President Trump going ham on these people. Now, I think Senator Chris Murphy, who we heard from earlier, he's already nervous about the Epstein files, but I think he's also a little bit nervous about President Trump's specific language, calling this sedition, calling it treason, because everybody knows what the punishment for sedition and treason is. Take a listen to Senator Murphy.
The United States just called for Democratic members of Congress to be executed.
Well, he actually didn't. He did say seditious behavior is punishable by death, but in order to be punishable by death, they would have to be found guilty. Right now, he's only insinuating that they have committed sedition. However, a large portion of the American population agrees with President Trump. He's not calling for people to just be marched out into a brick wall and dispatched. He's calling for them to be arrested and charged with the activities they have engaged in.
This is not normal. We cannot.
You know what else is not normal? Sitting members of Congress calling for a soft coup on social media. But we're having this happen right now, Senator Murphy.
Not allow this to feel normal. This, as far as I know, has never happened before in the.
Well, also, there's never been a request for a soft coup on social media by sitting members of Congress. But obviously, neither here nor there.
History of the country. Every Democratic member of the Senate and the House, their life is in jeopardy right now, especially those that were specifically targeted by this social media post.
You mean the ones who called for a soft coup? Those ones who signed their name and their face calling for members of the military and intelligence community to not follow the orders of the president or the chain of command. Okay.
Democratic senators and House members who were simply saying that no member of the military should act illegally or.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. Everybody learns that. When you come in and you take your oath to the Constitution, everybody learns that you don't have to follow illegal orders. But there's no illegal orders that are being given. Every single thing that you guys disagree with, you consider to be an illegal order. You have been directly calling for open rebellion since President Trump returned to the White House. He didn't stop there. As Chris Murphy just showed there, President Trump also mentioned what everybody here is thinking, that seditious behavior is punishable by death. I think that it's important to make sure that people remember that. You need to have that listed at the top of your thought patterns when you think about engaging in seditious behavior. If you're calling for a coup of a democratically elected leader of a constitutional republic, again, laws mean nothing if they are not enforced. Right here, Phil Holloway says Democrats in Congress are openly advocating mutiny by the U.S. Armed Forces. They care nothing about the general welfare of the nation. It's all about get Trump with these imbeciles. It absolutely is. And does anybody think that there's a coincidence here that former CIA officer Alyssa Slotkin shows up wearing this black leather getup? She looks like a West German Stasi secret police member in this outfit. Okay, you guys ever seen videos or movies about the East Germany of the Cold War? I mean, East and West Germany. East Germany was like a more oppressive communist state than like Russia proper. She looks like a Stasi member wearing this outfit. So the lawmakers in that video, we have already named them, but they are the threat to the Constitution. They are the threat to law and order. Nobody is being asked to commit illegal orders. I think largely they are talking about the actions taking place in the Caribbean Sea, but also largely the vast majority of Americans and obviously the military, they agree with what's happening. There's only so many times you can watch narco-terrorists bring boatloads of drugs into your country and then watch as your neighborhoods are destroyed because they're infected with addiction. And people, obviously, their lives are destroyed. Families are destroyed. This is bad. Just as President Trump said, this is bad. We cannot allow people to behave like this. Now, sedition is punishable by death, ultimately. But right now, under seditious conspiracy, if we were to go that route, 18 U.S.C. 2384, 2 or more persons conspiring by force to oppose the authority of the United States or to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law. Maximum penalty is currently 20 years imprisonment. President Trump mentions punishable by death. That's treason. He is referring to historical penalties for sedition and treason during wartime. And currently, President Trump has said on a number of occasions that he is a wartime president. So given that rationale, I think that 20 years imprisonment, the bar has been raised. And I also hope that anybody else who might consider making a public announcement like this would think better before doing it. Now, the mainstream media is going ape shit over President Trump's truths, suggesting that an action like this could be punishable by death. And Manu Raj, I think his name is, approached Mike Johnson as he was walking through Congress, and he wanted to know, President Trump suggesting that members of Congress should be put to death. What do you think about that, Speaker Johnson?
Speaker, how you doing? The president posted that Democrats who urge service members to not follow illegal orders should be punished, it should be seditious.
He's really stumbling here. I think even he's nervous. There's a lot of panic in Washington, D.C. right now.
Conspiracy and punishable by death. Give me a response to that.
Look, I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history. And as the father of a young man who is, at the Naval Academy, going to be joining the service, I know young soldiers, airmen, sailors, they don't need that kind of
brain rot, brain worms,
nonsense from people in Congress. It is very dangerous. At a very
Punishable
dangerous
by
time.
death. Punishable by
I'm
death.
going to let others define what it is, but it's wildly inappropriate.
Yeah, we'll let the DOJ define that, and we'll let a jury of their peers decide ultimately what the punishment should be. Now, Caroline Leavitt obviously was asked about this. I don't think there's any coincidence either that Caroline Leavitt held a big press conference earlier today. I think they knew they were likely going to get questions about this. Caroline Leavitt is a superstar. Let's go ahead and take a look at her comments as she was asked about this.
Because many in this room. This morning, President Trump accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to.
Jane, you ignorant slut. No, the president does not just want to execute members of Congress. However, those engaging in behavior that is synonymous with seditious conspiracy should be treated as such. That's my opinion. Let's hear from Caroline.
Because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country. And if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos, and it could incite violence, and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command. These 3 members of Congress, I will also add, knew exactly what they were doing. You look at Alyssa Slotkin. She's a former member of the CIA. Mark Kelly was a captain in the U.S. Navy. Maggie Goodlander was a naval officer, and notably, she is also the wife of Joe Biden's national security former advisor, Jake Sullivan. And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous message. And it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the Department of Justice and the Department of War to decide.
But the president has
Chris,
frequently, but Caroline, can I just follow up? The president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is the identification of behavior that they've engaged in. It's not the same thing as calling for your followers on the street to go commit random acts of violence with people because they disagree with them. But calling out people who are breaking laws and the punishment that is commensurate with the breaking of those laws is a very different thing.
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually,
every single
you can refuse an illegal order, which
but
is
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not. Every single order that is given to this United States military by this commander-in-chief and through this chain of command, through the Secretary of War, is lawful. And the courts have proven that. This administration has an unparalleled record at the Supreme Court because we are following the laws. We don't defy court orders. We do things by the books. And to suggest and encourage that active duty service members defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing for sitting members of Congress to do. And they should be held accountable. And that's what the president.
They know exactly what they're doing, and the mainstream media is covering up for them. It is very suspicious that they're not asking the right questions, but it's well expected from this fake news media landscape. Now, it was said by both Caroline Leavitt and Mike Johnson that they'll let the DOJ and the Department of War deal with that. Those individuals that were former military, technically, they could be called back and they could be prosecuted by military tribunals. Now, for those who were never in the military, and if they don't recall them to put them before a tribunal, it would be the DOJ that would be looking into this. And Deputy AG Todd Blanche is on the case. Let's take a listen.
Well, the investigation would absolutely be under what their intent was in saying this. And the question, we've all watched this a lot today, and the question you have to ask yourself is, what is their intent? What is the reason that they all went on a video and encouraged young men and women to defy court orders without even giving a hint of what's illegal, without even giving any suggestion of what law or what order they're being asked to violate? You cannot do that in this country, especially if you're a leader. And so what does the investigation look like? I think they should be held to account. I think that those congressmen should be required to answer questions and to answer questions about why they did what they did. And the American people deserve that, and so does President Trump.
Well, I'm gonna predict right now that they each will be investigated for this, and I am very much looking forward to seeing what comes from it. Now, Chuck Schumer, of course, is also very upset that President Trump would say the word seditious. Now, remember when they called President Trump an insurrectionist? They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly the insinuation they were making. We've still got morons who come around here and say that MAGA is traitors. I'll tell you who the real traitors are. The people that made those videos, the people who seek to block the lawful orders of this administration, the people who refuse to follow the chain of command, the people who engage in political violence on the streets and kill people that they disagree with ideologically. Why do they have to kill them? Why do they have to hurt them? Because they can't win with their ideas. They can't meet us intellectually. They can't be honest about what's been happening in this country. The only recourse they have is to meet ideas with fists, to meet ideas with bullets. And Chuck Schumer knows that. Chuck Schumer knows fully the dangers of the radical left base that these people have cultivated. So he took to the floor of the Senate this afternoon and basically went apeshit over President Trump's statements. Let's go ahead and watch Chuck's comments here.
Mr. President, Democrat leaders recognized.
Earlier today, Donald Trump shared a post on Truth Social calling for Democratic members of Congress to be hanged. He also posted a message that said, seditious behavior, punishable by death. Let's be crystal clear. The President of the United States is calling for the execution of elected officials. This is an outright threat, and it's deadly serious.
Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see what the DOJ has to say about it, Chucky.
We've already seen what happens when Donald Trump tells his followers that his political opponents are enemies of the state.
That.
Every time Donald Trump posts things like this, he makes political violence more likely. None of us should tolerate this kind of behavior.
Actually, I voted for this. I voted for President Trump because he's not a limp-wristed wet noodle like you and the rest of your ilk in Washington, D.C., because Donald Trump was not a politician, because we needed balls in the White House. We needed somebody to make decisions that were going to impact the American people favorably, rather than giving us lip service, saying one thing out of one side of your mouth and then doing another thing out of the other side. That's the type of politics that Chuck Schumer represents.
We all remember what January 6th was like. We lived through January 6th. We
also lived through the quite literal overthrow of a democratically elected government at that time because of the unprecedented level of fraud, the unprecedented level of CIs and confidential human sources that were in that crowd, the violence that was committed by essentially feds.
Through the assassination and attempted assassinations this year. We have members whose families have had to flee their homes. When Donald Trump uses the language...
Wait, flee their homes? Do you guys know how many people in the administration have been forced to move out of their homes and onto military bases because of the people who listen to Chuck Schumer and who are following individuals who make all kinds of crazy statements about political violence all the time, never get called out by any of these people? So disingenuous.
Of execution and treason, some of his supporters may very well listen. He is lighting a match in a country soaked with political gasoline.
Where did that gasoline come from, Chuck? I mean, let's be honest here. Where did it really come from? I mean, we all know where it came from, and it didn't come from Donald Trump. The political gasoline had already been spread all over this country. The divisions in this country had already been sowed for many years, oftentimes at the hands of the mainstream media, oftentimes at the hands of disingenuous and dishonest politicians like Chuck Schumer.
Every senator, every representative, every American, regardless of party, should condemn this immediately and without qualification. Because if we don't draw a line here, there is no line left to draw. Who would have thought the President of the United States saying his opponents should be hanged?
He didn't say that. It's just like Jasmine Crockett saying a person named Jeffrey Epstein. It's even worse because the words hanged did not come out of Donald Trump's mouth or his fingers.
It's outrageous. No president has ever stooped as low as Donald Trump. None. He has made political violence a feature of his politics. And if we don't draw a line here, there's no line left to draw. And yet today, he crossed yet another line that no democracy can afford to tolerate. He must be condemned forcefully, loudly, and without excuses.
Good luck with that.
Before someone takes his words as permission to do the unthinkable.
Nobody on the right has done anything like that.
Enables the flames of hatred to grow and spread.
Well, unfortunately, Chuck is blissfully unaware of all of the instances of left-wing violence that have happened under his watch. All right, now, finally, Caroline Leavitt also explained President Trump's comment of "quiet piggy" on Air Force One. And she said, hey, you know, President Trump, he's honest. He calls out fake news where he sees it. Let's take a listen here real quick. All right, actually, we've got to get past this ad. So real quick before we do, let me give one final message from our friends over here on Rumble over at Ram's Horn Coffee. Okay, this is Ram's Horn Coffee. It's a veteran-owned and operated roast to order coffee, and they're based out of South Carolina. If you like fresh, clean, organic coffee, you've got to give them a try. Each order is roasted, bagged, and shipped on the exact same day. Viewers of this Rumble channel can get 15% off, plus you're going to get free shipping by using the code RAMMED15 at checkout. RAMMED 15 at checkout. It's a goofy name, but it's great coffee. RamsHornCoffee.com. Use the discount code RAMMED15. Get 15% off free shipping. Use the QR code on screen. Use the link that you see in chat. And thank you very much to them for believing in and supporting the show. All right. And in case you didn't hear President Trump saying, "Quiet piggy," take a listen. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Incriminating in the file. Sir, if there's nothing incriminating in the file, sir, why not act like writing is
Quiet, piggy. I absolutely love that. Listen to this. You might remember. So anyways, the press is up in arms about Quiet Piggy. Do you remember when Joe Biden called Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch?
President Biden, place your bet. Do you think your place is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
What a stupid son of a bitch. What about when Joe Biden said, "Listen here, fat," to a voter? Do you remember that? All right, here's Caroline Levitt explaining the Quiet Piggy comment.
What did the president mean when he called a reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history. And he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access. You are in the Oval Office almost every day asking the president questions. And so I think the president being frank and open and honest to your faces rather than hiding behind your backs is frankly a lot more respectful than what you saw in the last administration, where you had a president who lied to your face and then didn't speak to you for weeks and hid upstairs and didn't take your questions. So I think everyone in this room should appreciate the frankness and the openness that you get from President Trump on a near daily basis. Go ahead.
As a follow-up,
yes.
All right. Now, I have heard people suggest that President Trump said Quiet Peggy rather than Quiet Piggy. However, the White House has made no effort to allay anyone's fears that he said Peggy and not Piggy. If he did, I think he's perfectly comfortable with the confusion existing. And obviously, saying Quiet Piggy is a lot funnier than saying Quiet Peggy. I have listened to it many, many times, and it definitely sounds like President Trump is saying Quiet Piggy. Quiet Piggy. So either way, I don't think it matters, because that reporter was being rude. She wouldn't stop talking when it wasn't her turn to ask a question. Piggy is way funnier than Quiet Peggy. All right, final thank yous over here on Rumble and Pilled. Surter says, I wonder how many of those people calling for disobedience were Epstein clients. Seems kind of timely, doesn't it? Well, we all know Alyssa Slotkin is or was CIA, and we also know about Jeffrey Epstein's ties to intelligence. So a lot of it could begin right there. Let me say thank you to... Okay, so we got Big Bird. Thank you to Seanjo for 2 cookies. Thank you to Unchained One, who says Crockett has went full retard. I hope this wannabe twunt loses her seat, period. If the redistricting efforts in Texas shape up, then she will. No thanks, Joe dropped a cookie and says, good Thursday evening, Lisa and Zach. Nothing can stop this now. It just keeps coming, and it continues to get more fun and more fun. They just continue to make bigger and bigger asshole propagandizing, lying mother effers. Forgive me, Lord, I speak the truth. Bless you, Zach and Lisa. Bless you as well, my friend. Trump1 says, Ohio, Zach. Ramaswamy, no! I don't know that there are any other choices in Ohio other than Ramaswamy. So unfortunately, that may be one of those states where people just got to grin and bear it. And to be truthful, even though I really have not liked the stances that Ramaswamy has taken on a number of occasions, including insinuating that Americans are lazy and that we are more obsessed with, I guess, consumer culture than learning. I think that's garbage, and I think everybody knows that. Vivek has really stuck his foot in his mouth on a number of occasions, but I don't know that there are any other choices in Ohio. But again, if you've got information, you want to reach out to me about local races, send me an email, redpill78@proton.me, and make sure that you have something about the primaries in the subject so that I know it's you, because I do get a lot of emails. I try to go through and read them. I don't respond to all of them because I simply just don't have the time, and sometimes I miss emails, but I want you to try. Thank you to Doug Boston, who says, Zach, get content, my friend. I am content. I am so comfy with the direction our nation is going. Very happy. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog said Sarah Fed is one of those that went after BX in her research of 764S. Absolutely. You are correct. And I said at the time when it began, you have to ask the question, why would people attack a single mother doing research about satanic pedophile groups that are real, that are victimizing children, and why would you want that research to stop? Why would you want those groups to not be investigated? It's a question that I think everybody should ask, and I've seen a lot more people asking it online, and I think that's a good thing. Now, it could be as simple as somebody just having a big ego and not wanting to be wrong, but of course, it also could be a lot more nefarious than that. Thank you to 123SKG for the cookie, and my good friend Matt1776, one of the creators of pilled.net. Make sure that you are over there on pilled.net, hitting that red pill button. What up, fam? We now have a cast feature. What does that mean, a cast feature? Tin Man 1295 says, thanks, brother, with a can. R4 cents, thank you for the cookie. And Filter Dog says, Doc has just put Tina Peters in solitary. Okay, so that's good in a manner of speaking, because it means that Tina doesn't have to be worried about being sick and being around others who might be able to hurt or victimize her. It also might mean that she's about to make her way into federal custody as they have asked. So thank you very much for that, Filter Dog. I really do appreciate it. Matt, I'm going to reach out to you and see what this cast feature is that you're talking about. Before we end the show, let me very quickly set up my raids. Who do you guys want to go to over on Pilled? We've got Severe, Good Dog, Quite Frankly, and Liberty BA. I can't see who the rest of it is. I'll send you over to Severe, because Severe is an old buddy of mine. Make sure that when you go to Severe's chat, you say what's up from me. And then over here on Rumble, let me see. What do we got going over here on Rumble that I can set up a raid for? Who is online? Who is live right now? Let me see. They have changed the way that Rumble looks now. So I can go to who is live. I don't see any of my friends live on Rumble, so I don't know. Is Severe live on Rumble? Severe Anon. He may only be live. No, he is live on Rumble as well. Okay, so let me send you guys over to Severe. Okay. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate you. And I hope you have yourselves a wonderful night. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'm also going to have an interview with my good friend Jonathan Otto that's going to be premiering tomorrow. We are talking about some incredible new research coming out about the success of using red light therapy and pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy in a number of specific cancers: breast cancer, prostate cancer, skin cancer. So if you or somebody you love is facing a cancer diagnosis, then this would be a show that you would definitely want to tune in for. And otherwise, if you're just somebody who wants to make sure that you're as healthy as you can possibly be, definitely check it out. It'll be coming out tomorrow during the afternoon. So love you. Good luck. God bless. Gold pills are coming, and I'll see you on the next one.